Hey everybody. Thanks for being in space with us today. We are so excited to share the zine that we were able to put together over the last couple months time. But yeah, I'm Kellen. I am a graphic designer based in Brooklyn, and yeah, this was a fun project for me and Mahi. If you want to introduce yourself, and then we can jump in.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I don't know if you can see my video. I cannot see myself, but okay, cool. You can see me. My name is Mahi, and I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for everybody who's able to join us. I am a fashion design student and also designer. Just really excited to be able to work on this project because the topics that we were able to discuss were things that were near and dear to our heart. And yeah, so we're going to get into the details soon.
So I am going to share we have a digital version of the zine ready, so I'm going to share that for us. Here we go. So, is it working? I can't see. Okay, can everybody see?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, this was the first issue of the Design to Divest zine. We wanted to put something together that talked a lot about afrofuturism, which is a kind of a concept in design that very much aligned with Design to Divest mission and goals and stuff. Is exploring concepts that are different from like the usual like Eurocentric concepts of design that we see a lot. We wanted to highlight some of the design practices from people like us, and so there were a couple different ways we did that. We also wanted to introduce kind of what a Design to Divest zine would look like. And so one of the ways we did that is by talking about using the content that we do every day here on Zoom and just in the different ways that we connect, and kind of tying that into a format for everyone to read. And so we put it up with a transcription that we had and turn that into a layout. So I will just click through this and we can talk layouts and things. We put this together in Google Slides, which was this is our like kind of editorial, like we're gonna do the opposite of what you would expect an editorial to do. I think that was kind of our goal, was to kind of be like just as creative as we could be within the editorial guidelines. Ariana, who kind of kickstarted the zine idea, was also an editorial person, and we were very much like, let's not go by this typical kind of rules that are set in place for editorial design. We're gonna do what we want and like kind of explore different boundaries and stuff like that. And one of those was with designing in Google Slides. So we did a lot of templating, a lot of figuring out. Michael, one of our other Design to Divest colleagues, helped us put together the slides in Google Docs. We had a lot of decision making with the team figuring this one out. And yeah, so we put it together and got a couple of these. So as we go through, these are just kind of like our opening spreads. If you've ordered a copy and it's not to you, this is what it looks like. But if you have your copy, that's awesome. You can see for yourself. But yeah, we kind of followed like a column format, switched up some fonts for our features, just as like a, tie the font to the feature and get that frame recognition going. And yeah, we started off I think we started off with saying it was going to be like a 24-page zine. And then by the end, we were at like 72. So we were like, our brains were expanding. we really did our push boundaries. And so, but yeah, to get into our first piece, I'm gonna pass it to Mahi to talk about the writing process of this Cosmic Slop.
Thank you, Kellen. So to begin and like start off with Cosmic Slop, I was a part of Nikita Oliver's open syllabus for the abolition study crew. So some homies that I organized with wanted to start an informal study crew where we could just talk about the material, and the link to it is actually live, so I can share it if folks want to like get all of the resources. A lot of the content is free and accessible. So with the extra credit piece that was on that syllabus was to watch a clip called Cosmic Slop. And so I ended up watching it. It was on YouTube. And then I got really excited and into it. So I suggested it to Ariana and Kellen. I was like, hey, can we talk about this in the zine? Like, does it work? And they're like, yeah, let's do it. So as I started exploring more about what Cosmic Slop meant, I was listening a lot to Funkadelic, and in my writing process, trying to understand how that could come into play. And then it led me into critical race theory by Derek Bell, and really understanding that and just getting into the depths of like what this concept means. And so to me, Cosmic Slop is the intricate realities that we live and breathe now, and how to further unravel that and to move away from it. It's to be able to use a decolonized lens and say, we reject all of these different forms of assimilation and mirrors of our oppressors, so that we can build the liberation that we're seeking in the world. And if we do not try to decode that, that's how you get further lost into the cosmic slop. And so that's a little bit about like the back end of it. And a big part of when I was putting the spreads together and we were like working through that was drawing inspiration from Kristen, Ashiatu, and Meron's designs that they had, which are really, really dope. I was able to figure out how the words and the pieces would really intermingle together. And one of the things that I think was really dope about Cosmic Slop is within the time period, the film was, you know, created in the 94, and then now we're here. And so much of it is just constantly evolving and also very much static. And so rather it was dope to be able to apply different lenses and think about what is it that's still prevalent, where are the foundation and pieces that we need to really dismantle and like recreate, and how does that look like without having a, you know, like an academia elitist point of view. And that's why the glossary was really important for us at the end, which I know we can get to later, but that's a big piece on like not gatekeeping information and making sure that words and context and feels are just very much transparent and on the grounds. So that's a little bit about that. Yeah, so here, okay, we're gonna go through and see all the pieces. So to give like a little bit more background in regards to like, I don't know if I should give it all away, but the story is that aliens come to Earth and they tell America KKK that they would like to exchange all melanated folks for resources and solutions of like pollution, debt, and like anything that folks are facing. And it's a big debate. Well, it's not much of a debate because the folks in the room are like, yo, it's fine. Like, let's just give them out. And the only person who ends up saying I'm against this is one man who is on like the president's council, and he's a Republican Black man who's like, yo, this is fucked up. Like, let me rethink my cosmic slop. Like, what does this look like? And so it's like following him and seeing like how he's untangling it, and different individuals who are part of his community as well. And the juxtaposition between how far he's already gone to be derailed from his community and like disconnected, and what does that look like, and can you rebuild that? What are the losses that come from that, and how a lot of the different pieces of like solidarity or movement were unable to be unified in some ways because there's a lot of lack of healing and accountability taken on by folks. So I won't say more, but that's a little piece of it. So yeah.
Sorry, I'm like going through here, but yeah, this is the Cosmic Slop piece. And then it's kind of like what I was talking about before was our conversation on divestment. So we took one of our talks that we did over last October with Where Are the Black Designers? And that was kind of with Shaquille, Aziz, and Michael talking kind of about, I feel like just why Design to Divest is what it is, and like the purpose and the things that we're going after. We felt that was kind of really a good like intro point into our beliefs as a group, but then also like just what we would want to continue exploring with the zine and like the purposes of the zine. So we ended up taking the Zoom call and transcribing it, and then, you know, taking that and cutting it down into something that was perfect for print and putting in the zine to give out, using these kind of screenshots of the slides and playing with, you know, different formats, like I was saying before, so kind of rotating things around and testing out new things. And Kristen also created these awesome illustrations for us of everybody. That's also on the last page of the Meet the Team, but these kind of really helped us kind of annotate everyone who's speaking and like tying in different things. And yeah, so really it was fun to play with formats here, go through I've like read this piece now a couple times. So it's like, I'm just like, yeah, oh yeah, I know where we're at, like just based on the pictures, but like, you know, it's awesome too. Like every time you read it, it feels like I'm learning something. I take up like a new piece of it. But yeah, this is definitely, the full conversation is available online. And then when we get the virtual or digital version of the zine ready, that will also be there too. But we are, yeah, just kind of keep working, gonna keep using the content that we already make. Like, you know, we have a lot of Zoom meetings and we have study halls and where we are all together in a room thinking on things and creating new realities for ourselves. So we figured this would be like the perfect way to kind of take that and just continue our line of accessibility throughout different platforms. Yeah, and so Mahi was kind of talking about the glossary also before, but we just, we thought it was really important to kind of unpack a lot of the terms and usage that we use, you know, to kind of understand the different like places everyone can be in like learning different things or unlearning different things at the same time. So we kind of throughout our process of figuring out like, you know, content, what we wanted to include, glossary was definitely like first on our list. We're like, if they're going to use terms, like we want to make sure everybody understands them. So we had to cut it down. We could have done a lot, but we have like, there's like, you know, there's so many words and, you know, we can't explain everything to everybody, but we included, you know, some things in here that we thought was really important and different explored ways. I think there are some websites that kind of utilize this technique too, but, you know, this for like a magazine was something that we felt was kind of like, it's like something that happens in like publications and like journals and things like that. But for a zine, we're like, this is important and not just as important as having it a dictionary or a glossary. It's at the end of a book or like a reference sheet. You would want it in a zine when you're reading through content. But yeah, and then the end was our just kind of stay tuned. We had a great time working with butwhole.press, which we will pass it to them and then we can pass it to Kristen and Ashiatu to talk about like art and how they created the art. But yeah, I know Nagash is here if you want to talk about our collaboration process and like working with together, I guess, on putting this together. But yeah.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's great to be here. Yeah, super happy that we've gotten this far. It was a lot of work on everybody's end. So super grateful for y'all for trusting us and being part of this process. It was really fun. It was really fun to print for us as usual. It's just logistics always get tricky. And the thing about this one was like binding got really interesting because we started off, like you said, it was like supposed to be 24 pages. So we're like, oh, we're gonna bind this in-house. It's gonna be so easy. And then it turned much bigger and we had to contact an external vendor, which we use all the time, but sometimes they get so busy and they get so weird. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I have the zine here and I have a weird camera. Let me see if I can make this work real quick. I don't know if you can you see my other camera?
Yes.
I have to do something. I have to get rid of my blur.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So I have the zine here. Again, really happy with how it came out and really proud of it. Only few decisions we made was just kind of using the dot process to print all the images. You probably do not see that through this webcam, but those of you with your copy probably have noticed this. Other than that, we haven't really made any changes to anything because y'all did a great job, knocked it out of the park. But yeah, as usual, you know, some weird things happen in the process, but stick through it, and yeah, happy with the final product, excuse me. So it's a lot of fun. I've been gathering our process of like printing and binding, and I've gathered quite a number of images and videos, and I was going to put them together for today, but figured it might be too much, but I will send them over to y'all because it's a really fun process. I'm in love with Riesel printing, so maybe I'm biased, but it's a really fun process to see everything kind of come together. But yeah, that's kind of pretty much all. But yeah, if you want to refer to this as we're having this conversation, I have this camera set up and I can pull up the page for any reason. But yeah, thanks y'all. This has been fun.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And yeah, it was great. It was great working with you. Mahi, like if you wanted to say anything about like the connection and how we all made this connect.
Yes. So I'm just so grateful to y'all because Neg, you've been rolling with all the different changes that were happening 24/7. And really the process, I think, was a lot of learning throughout this, because I had never made a zine before. And I feel like it was a lot of collaborative research and like questions that we kept asking. And so learning about like what dimensions to do, how to go about making sure things don't get cut off or you want them to get cut off was really dope. And so I know Butthole Printing because y'all are based in SF, and we used to be in the Bay Area. And it's really cool that you do such amazing work within the community. And yeah, I think that's all. I'm really excited for us to continue collaborating together.
I noticed right when I was picking this up, I noticed the volume 1 and I was like, oh, dope. And also stressful, more to come.
Yes, excited for more to come, and I feel like the stress will be less, you know?
Yeah, we figured it out. We've got a lot of things figured out. We learned in the process too, because we know a lot about the process, but sometimes we do not a great job of communicating, like how to do bleeds with people, what areas to avoid in the gutter and stuff. Like we know these things, but and some of our clients do as well. So we've kind of learned to kind of be very explicit and just like let folks know what you can and cannot do, kind of.
Mm-hmm. So I wonder if Ashiatu or Kristen, which one of y'all would like to go first and talk about your process within the art?
How you feel, Ashiatu? You want me to go first? Okay, cool. Hi, everybody. I'm Kristen. I'm from California, and I'm based in Boston. I do, well, I'm an illustrator, spent some years doing color design in apparel and footwear, and now I'm a self-employed lady and figuring stuff out. But Design to Divest since last year has been like just a super important part of my journey. And I think in the beginning of the Cosmic Slop piece, Mahi asked, you know, what realities is your Cosmic Slop made of? And I feel like that has been a question that I've been trying to answer and like just identify, you know, what needs to be addressed or healed. And, you know, it's ever evolving, but this artwork, I mean, it's a set of collages I did. I've been using Procreate because I'd be drawing on there most of the time. But I feel like these collages are such an interesting reflection of like what has been going on for me. You know, all of the different intersections of my identity. I personally have like a lot of like religion related trauma. And so like, as I start to, as my perspective and ideas start to shift, and as I start to decolonize or divest from, yeah, there's just kind of a lot going on there, but that's kind of, I think that's what's kind of informing the work here. And I mean, I didn't necessarily make these collages specifically for this article, but I mean, I'm on steering and talking to these folks every week. And so it's, you know, it's kind of, it's all interconnected. So that's a little bit. If anybody has any questions, I could share more about something specific, but yeah.
Where do you get your images?
All over the place. I've started using Arena thanks to y'all's recommendation a while back. I mean, some of this, I mean, I love fashion. So, I mean, like this, I believe is like this woman with the roller skates. I think it's like a 90s, like Mugler fashion show or something like that. So, I mean, I tend to focus a lot on like Black femme beauty in my work, and nature And I really love space and kind of like celestial bodies and texture. So I've been kind of playing around with that. There's actually, so I love analog a lot more than digital art. I kind of started doing digital work during the pandemic because I was like staying at my mom's house and I didn't want to be painting all up in her crib. So that's where I started using Procreate. But now that I'm kind of back in my own place, I've been trying to mix the two. So I do a lot of like ink and watercolor. And so I've been scanning my textures and doing overlays, and that kind of adds, the aesthetic and the feel that I want for my work.
And I have another question.
Okay.
How is it working in this like black and yellow space with the closets and whatnot? Because I think that was a really interesting constraint that we were working with across the zine.
Yeah. I mean, most of my work is like very, very, very colorful. But I think for this, like, well, I mean, I think it worked well. I mean, it was kind of just a shift of like looking at, thank you, Zariah. Just kind of a shift in thinking about value rather than hue, yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, how'd you get so fucking dope?
You're so funny, Michael. Yeah, but I feel so honored to, I'm honored to like be close to y'all on the steering committee and just be a part of this community. And I feel really honored to be a part of this first scene. Kellen, Mahi, Ashiatu, you did such a beautiful job. Also, Neg, like, I love this. I can't stop like staring at it. It's so beautiful. I'm excited for us to do more stuff.
I feel like at 72 pages, we got to stop calling this thing a zine. This is a
Probably.
book.
Probably.
I said that a few
we made
times.
a book. Yeah, like this thing was
we
like
committed
it's
to.
hardbound. This is a book. Like, what are we doing here? This is great.
I know. I was also gonna say I would love the black and yellow restriction, but I really also want to see some of these in color. I've been printing a lot of color stuff, so I don't know. Maybe these would be posters.
You're reading my mind, Neg. I think one of the things that we were thinking about when we had this restriction. I think I'm probably to blame for it, but we were looking at Rizzo and thinking about how to keep, especially for the first outing, keep the process as simple as possible. But now that we have a working relationship with your team, I personally would love to split some of these out into really big images and to still use the limitations of your process, because Rizzo, I think, just gives you such fascinating texture and overlay with that. But to see how much further we can press into 3, 4, 5 colors even would be a lot of fun.
For sure. I was also proposing initially that we can even print yellow, but this is a smart move because it just cut off a layer for us, just print black on yellow. But...
Kristen, I have a question. So could you talk about the difference between the craft of and the process of collaging versus your illustration and ceramics?
Yeah, so in my color concept world, I was basically making a lot of mood boards. But I think with I don't know, it's an interesting process. For these, I tried to work like as fast as I could to start to like build shapes. I mean, for a drawing, like I might, you know, take the space and start to map out, you know, a figure, and what am I trying to say? I also think like, you know, all of these images are from, they've been cut out, which I also, I've done quite a bit of like cut paper. So like creating like singular images and like figuring out that negative space. Yeah, it's a little bit more iterative, I guess. And I mean, it's great working digitally because you can just kind of undo and delete rather than if you've pasted something on, you know. But yeah, I think a lot of my other work is a little bit more slow and meditative, whereas this, it was kind of, yeah, it's just kind of like mashing up and taking away and putting back and, you know, trying like 3 more things and then pulling something back. Yeah, I don't know if that's a great answer, but.
No, it's perfect.
Ashiatu, do you want to talk about your work here?
So hello everybody. My name is Aishatu, and I feel so grateful to have been able to be part of this amazing zine. I'm based in Germany, and I'm a peace technologist. I work on peace building projects in the Middle East at the moment, and before in West Africa, and I use technological solutions for peace building. And in my free time, I like to use machine learning techniques and artificial intelligence to develop AI art. And for this zine, I have been inspired by African futurism and the theme of the zine. In particular, why I was particularly interested in this topic was the fact that, you know, I grew up in Germany, and growing up, I never used to like science fiction. I always liked all the other genres, but I never liked science fiction because even in the imagination of future scenarios, Black people were not even part of this future scenarios and ideas. So I couldn't find myself in these stories. And then I discovered Black science fiction and African futurism, which showed me that there are stories of the future that imagine protagonists that look like me, that, you know, have the same background, where I could feel like or imagine speculative futures. So this is something that really influences my art. So for the zine, I actually developed some of them pieces specifically for the zine. I was thinking about different structures and patterns that could look really interesting with the colors. The original colors are much more bright of the pieces that I created, but they also look nice in yellow and black. For instance, this, I usually work with photographs or with sketches that I find, photographs that I find online. I've recently started to develop my own pictures of African people in Nigeria, because I'm originally from there. So, but this picture I found online, and then I used AI and machine learning techniques to transfer different patterns into the image, as you can see here. And yeah, I was just playing around with patterns and color. The colors you can't see here at the moment, but you can see the different layers. Yeah, this is basically was my process. It was a lot of fun to develop those pieces, and yeah, I don't know if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'm happy to answer. I like to center Black or African people in my art, and yeah, this is one of them as well. Just playing with shapes and color and patterns, like I mentioned.
Yeah, I think both of these just like really like paired with the kind of Cosmic Slop piece. It just like, it was amazing to be, first off, like, yeah, thank you all, like both, for just contributing your work to this. It was like amazing to like get the images in and just be like, this is bad. Like I was like freaking out for a good like hot minute. And then I was like, this is just, yeah. So these come together so nicely. And I think like just framing the whole zine like with your guys' images was amazing.
Yeah, and I just want to say the color pieces that y'all had were just wow. Like the colors really blew me away. And then I was happily surprised that with black and yellow, it still worked. Like it still showed the detail, and like just, it was really, really incredible. I was on the same vibe with Kellen. I was like, whoa, these are lit. So really excited that we were able to like incorporate everything, because it worked so perfectly. So yeah. Are there any other questions that folks have, or anything else people want to jump in and say?
I just want to say I really love these.
Nope, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I really love these. I knew ML was involved in some of them, but I didn't know it was all of them. And I myself am a big time ML artist, so I think we should chat after this. But yeah, I'm trying to do a lot of Rezo to ML and back and forth. So I'm really interested in getting like weird colors and textures. Yeah. But yeah, this work is phenomenal. I've never, yeah, great stuff.
I too, go ahead. Bouncing off the question that Shaquille asked in the chat, I'm really curious to know about Aishatu's tech stack and what the programs are.
It's proprietary.
Well, I'm not really a computer programmer, so I try to always find workarounds or no-code AI solutions. There's something called a Colab notebook that you can use. There are different techniques, like you can use something called style transfer, where you have like an image and then you create some kind of another image that is a pattern, and then you run it through the program and it can create different iterations of the image with different transferring the pattern into the image. This is something that you can use. There are different things. There's a program called Runway that is also really good for creating AI art or even AI videos. If you want to create videos that are artificially enhanced, you don't need any coding knowledge to develop that with Runway. But I use artificial intelligence just as part of my process. So afterwards, I use other programs to continue like working on it digitally, like Clip Studio Paint. I like that program a lot. Or you could use Affinity Photo also in order to work a little bit more on the image. I wish I had Procreate, because then I could really go to the next level with my art, because it's such an amazing program. But Clip Studio Paint is also really good if you want to do like some post digital embellishments. And what I tend to do as well, when I create a piece, I print it out on really high quality canvas or gallery paper. And then I embellish it again with like acrylic or oil paint or something. So at the moment, I'm working on a new interpretation of the African King's Portrait. And there I use artificial intelligence to like infuse interesting African print patterns into the image. And my aim is now as the next step to print it out on like canvas and then to embellish it maybe with gold or something, right? So there's so many ways you can use AI in your process. I don't think it should be the main thing. I don't only focus on using that alone, but I look into how I can, use it to center African and Black experiences, and just show something different.
Hold on. You cannot just drop, and then I'm going to embellish it in gold and skip on to the next sentence like we don't even know what the fuck is going on there. You be gold leafing too?
That's the next thing I want to experiment with. Yeah. I'm still learning, but that's the next thing I want to do.
I'm just trying to learn fucking XD over here and like afford rent, and y'all motherfuckers are out here just going off. I love it.
One thing I like to think about, I do a lot of ML work as well, but I'm always perpetually inspired that at the forefront of the AI ethics debate and discussion, it's being led by Black women. And I'm sure you know a lot of these people. I don't have to name drop them right now, but I'm really inspired by the work that they do. And a lot of the reason I use ML in my practice is kind of to highlight some of the societal dangers that some of us are just blindly walking into with surveillance and whatnot. So I think it's amazing to see like Black ML art at the forefront with also Black ML activism towards, steering us towards a better outcome.
Exactly. That's actually what I do with my other pieces. One of the pieces I've created is called African Epistemology, and I try to explore and interrogate, AI ethics issues and also ideas about what it means to be a human, and our and indigenous and African ideas about how we relate with the external world. So I think art is a good vehicle or a good means for illustrating different ideas of knowledge and what it means to be a human, or what it means to be part of the ecosystem. So I think a lot of the problems we encounter right now with AI and how especially Black people suffer from the negative effects is because it's kind of based on a Western philosophical idea of what AI is. And if we would include other philosophies, we could actually develop AI that can heal rather than punish and incarcerate people. So as you said, there are a lot of amazing Black women who are leading this debate at the moment. And it's glad to see that at the moment you can see this huge movement towards using also art as a form of activism, or as a form of raising awareness.
Actually, I have a question for you. So like just thinking about the Cosmic Slop and critical race theory and all of those things kind of starting off in the early 90s, actually late 80s, early 90s, where the fidelity of AI and machine learning technology wasn't where it is now. How do you think AI and machine learning fits into the cosmic slop now?
This is a good question. If you look at AI at the moment, there's so many stories of people who have been wrongfully incarcerated because of facial recognition software or technology or techno-solutionism. This idea that you can solve all the problems with technology, or when I think of Cosmic Slop and AI, I think about the way of how AI bias has been creating this harm in Black and Indigenous communities. There's, of course, these cases of facial recognition software wrongfully identifying Black people as criminals, or you can see how AI sometimes even doesn't recognize Black people as humans. And then you have cases where when you look at language technology, AI is capable of translating German, English, French, and understanding all these languages. However, all those 2,000 African languages that exist don't even have a data set in order to be included into the technological advancement. So for me, it's like a new way of decentering non-Western identities and ideas. It's kind of a form of erasure that is happening at the moment, where certain companies decide which data is worth saving or worth collecting. So in order for us to ensure that our communal memory doesn't get forgotten, we need to find ways to use technology to heal and to reverse the harm that is being caused.
I think we also just made like a crucial link here, which is weird. I'm thinking about it now. Like, I think AI is kind of like the aliens here. You know, it's like it's offering this endless possibilities at the sacrifice of criminalizing some innocent Black people. So I don't know. I think we made an interesting link there. So it's a trade-off, and obviously we see what the tech solutionists have chosen. They've chosen the trade-off. They've chosen the flawed AI. You know.
I'm interested to know like even more about this idea of AI as a tool for healing, because so much of the conversation around technology as it stands in terms of, you know, oppression versus liberation and things is really focuses on the negative impacts. And so our imagination to be able to think about the technology in terms of our own liberation seems to be limited by just the amount of poor uses of it that contribute to oppression. And so like from your work, you know, even in with peace technology and conflict resolution, like what are your thoughts on how have you kind of seen technology kind of be used in a way that's much more progressive and positive, and not as detrimental as it's been to our communities?
This is also a very important question. When I look at my day job as a peace technologist, we use technology in general to support peaceful coexistence among communities that are normally in conflict. So our aim is not even, peace, which is in our field, the absence of violence. Rather, we look for ways how we can increase feelings of belonging, connectedness, a sense of empathy and understanding. So, for instance, we develop serious games, so which is a way of using gamification and game elements and storytelling to raise awareness, and also as an ultimate goal, have some kind of behavior change. So you can tackle topics like gender equality, or even how to better integrate marginalized communities. So there's so many different techniques that you can actually use in order for technology to heal. So you can use games that people, something that is really accessible, or we work a lot with social media, which is a virtual space where people come together. And we know a lot about, negative viral content, but what if you could actually create positive viral content that can reach a lot of people? This could actually contribute towards raising awareness, and also reaching a lot of people with positive, peaceful messages. This is something that we do in the project I work in. And also what's really important is what we realized, using creative approaches, combining it with technology, has the most impact in healing as well. So really focusing on storytelling, creating movies, creating maybe soap operas, using different techniques to tell stories so that people can relate to the everyday instances of conflict. So I think that's why this zine is such an important method, because it's a magazine that is it's a zine that is available in print. It is available online. You can interact with it when you have it like printed out in front of you. You can have a conversation. You can have an interaction with the written word. And there's so many different ways this zine could be used to further amplify the message. So I think using creative arts, combining it with technology, I think that is the way forward to really create technologies that heal. Because it's kind of like a human instinct to create, to try to understand the human world, the outside world, with images and with sound. So combining these things, I think, can really help with healing. And I can give maybe an example here. In another project, I work on how AI is impacting the criminal justice system. And I participated in a hackathon, and me and my teammates, we decided that we wanted to develop now a web documentary using AI, so people can interact with the technology that is misidentifying Black people, to feel like what it feels like, to be wrongfully judged by an AI. So there's so many ways actually you can use machine learning in the web, so that people can interact with the technology and learn what it means and what it does, rather than having it in a paper as an abstract idea in a research paper, for instance. So we need to find really creative ways to make these concepts, these ideas tangible. And I think that's why art, music, film, design has such an important role.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's like the artwork and design is kind of like the wayfinding for us to be able to navigate the cosmic slop. And so like, and thinking about that, like this question for you, Mahi, and like writing this, like you wrote from a perspective, like you were observing the cosmic slop and you kind of wrote from like, you know, the outside looking in, but how do you feel as a participant in it?
That is a really good question, Aziz. So I think as I was writing it, I was feeling a lot of how I was participating in the cosmic slop myself, because there was so much of, for me at least, as I was trying to understand it, I kept focusing on like the non-judgment piece of being a part of the cosmic slop. Because if you go back to this song, for example, that it originates, like the actual like film is kind of based off of a lot of inspiration from Funkadelic's band. And so in their song Cosmic Slop, they're talking about a young woman who is a single mom and she works as a sex worker, and she every night is like praying, and she has like a religious piece where she feels conflicted, and she says, God, please don't judge me. I'm just trying to provide for my kids. And so there's this idea of like the shame that she's feeling as being a part of a sex worker, when in reality, there obviously should be no shame. And like, you know, she should be like, you know, embracing the fact that like, hey, I got this, I'm doing this. And really, I think what the Funkadelic band is singing is saying, you think you're talking to the devil, but really you're just existing in reality and, you know, trying to make your life happen in the way that it is and support for your family. And I think in writing it, I just kept thinking about the idea of how, as we're trying to navigate and not fall within the crevices of the cosmic slop of our lives, whether it be like how to exist, how to show up, how to support one another, or like be a part of different solidarity movements, there's a big piece of thinking I'm not doing it correctly, or I'm not doing it in a way where I'm doing enough. And so I think what it taught me was to just really learn to like slow down and really appreciate and check in with one another on pieces of how we're going about them, and just being honest in regards of like, I don't got all the answers and I'm going to lean in my community, or I'm going to say, hey, like, how are you doing it? And how's that going for you? And I think within the healing piece and going back to it, it really goes down to just saying, if you're struggling with something, just being honest and real with your own community, or being okay with like building and opening up with folks. So that was one of the things that I really learned from this piece, because writing it was really hard. It was a lot of words and they just kept going and going. And I'm really grateful to y'all for, you know, being down to like edit and talk about ideas, and for the folks that said, no, sis, you're going to write this and you're going to finish it. Because I felt like there were so many pieces I wanted to include, and it got too long, so I had to hold back. But also it can be overwhelming because I think it has so many intersections. And so trying to hold all of the pieces and making sure that no piece or person or movement or idea is left out. And that was a big challenge for me. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it doesn't. And it's interesting because it's like the cosmic slop is endless. So you just keep on writing and writing, but it's just this endless kind of thing. But then it seems like you got to a point of like, there's a principle of community and leaning on others in order to navigate it. Is that like, you know, like, because it seems like the cosmic slop, like, it doesn't end, it's vast. And so like, you know, it reminds me of just like prior to like, I guess maps, or like when ship captains, like they would say like, you know, follow the North Star, or follow, you know, they would have like just specific principles in order to just navigate the world, because they couldn't see it all, they didn't understand it all. And so as you were doing this, did you know, were there some principles or things that you're like, okay, like there's no way for me as an individual to be able to like really understand all of it, of the cosmic slop, but like there's some principles or some things that I can use in order to like, that I'm learning to like navigate it, you know, like, and like, did you discover those things as you were writing it? And what were some of those things, like, in addition to, I guess, like community?
So yes, there were. I think to start off, a lot of the principles that I was basing it off of was my ethnic studies background. And so within those courses, I was able to get more of a grounding in academia background in regards to divestment from capitalism, from disposability politics, and from the ideas of like global solidarity, as we're on that page right now, and saying Black liberation is Palestine's liberation, that if we are trying to understand what it means to be a like an intersectional individual, that means we have to get with it with all different folks that are on the like struggling through different issues, and how do we find those interconnections. And one of the things that I kept seeing come up was topics in regards to, let me flip through it as I'm talking so I can like be reminded really quick. But so to reference one piece specifically that really explored a lot of the different like guiding principles for me was in the instance of Professor Golightly, who's the gentleman who was trying to convince the council, the president's council, don't, you know, ship off all these Black folks to the aliens to an unknown fate. He decided that he would go in and talk to different folks that he thought had a stake in having Black folks be present on Earth. And his mechanisms and tools that he used were underneath this guise of like still very capitalistic and thinking, oh, I'll remind people the money that they're going to lose, or like I'll tell these different oil companies that they're going to lose out of this. But from that, it really goes into saying this this quote from Audre Lorde that says like reinforces the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. And it's just really reminding us that the same approaches and systems used to oppress Black people will never actually liberate us. And so as I was going through it, I would try to dissect and think, are we mimicking our oppressors by thinking that's our liberation? Or is this something that we can just like really move away from and try to detangle ourselves? And that process can be honestly really painful and really confusing, because I don't think it's always written down so clearly. It might be in your soul, but it also comes with a privilege, because some folks are like, yo, I just got to eat. Like I have to survive. I have to make a living. And so it can be really difficult for folks to be able to like really commit to that. And I think if we're more honest and like kinder to ourselves in a way of saying, hey, I'll meet you where you're at and let's do this together, that's where it can be possible. And also like, I'm really big on saying, this might sound like this, but like, let's decode it. Like, what are the words and what are the feelings behind it? Because, and that's why the glossary was so important, because if we're not on the same page and we don't have the same tools to decode and like, you know, decolonize this world, then how can we do it? And I think in a lot of like social justice spaces, there can be judgment that can leave folks out and say like, yo, you're not with it, or like, oh, you don't really get it. And I think it's just like humbling ourselves and saying we all start in different spaces, but also having like the ability and space to like hold for folks, but then also protect your own energy so that you're not burnt out and exhausted trying to like bring too many people on. So yeah, that's like my own personal like thoughts on that piece. But yeah, I think again, Aziz, did I answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of context, and it actually like made me think, because like the Cosmic Slop being this vast place, but then like this zine also, it feels like it's a not necessarily an instruction manual, but like it's kind of like the wayfinding of the Cosmic Slop. And actually, like Kellen, I'm actually interested in like in the way that you were kind of putting the layout. Like there are certain parts that are bold, like certain like pages that have like not a lot of text. Like it's kind of like, you know, like walking through some space where like there's a lot of information here, and then there's like a little bit of information here, but it's like there for you to like understand like where you should be going, but then you can always kind of go back. But I don't know, like Kellen, like I'm interested in like how are you thinking about like the layout in terms of like it being a tool to navigate a cosmic slop that that Mahi was just trying to illustrate through words?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I feel like we all kind of like hit on like the different places, like, you know, like, and where like the Cosmic Slop comes through, and so, like with the like with the design, it was like, you know, immediately, like for me, it was just like, okay, well, what are like the things that I've been taught? Like I had learned like magazine design, like, right, they show you like the New York Times, they show you all these different layouts, and that's like, this is what is right, like this is what works and things like that, like this is what's readable, and this isn't, like, you know, things that like of that nature. And I think kind of having that, and like just for me it was like immediate, like just all this jamming of information. It's like, where is our kind of understanding of like how like people kind of absorb different information like coming from? And so like with stuff like this, like being kind of so vast, it was like we wanted to really emphasize kind of that space, and I felt like that was kind of like something. So like that was like when we went up the page size, I was like, absolutely, like let's just go, because it was like, you know, like we'll give this the space that it needs. Like it's almost would kind of felt like we would be kind of like, at points I felt like I was kind of getting caught like in my Cosmic Slop, because I'd be like, oh, like, okay, these layouts need to be like, you know, perfect column widths and like this, and like I remember Mahi, you like put the design together for this one, and I was like, this is like my brain. like I am like this was just, it was like, you know, like I was like, okay, so there, like even the possibilities that I was thinking of, it was like there's so many more outside of like what is like a typical kind of editorial layout, and like explore it. And I think the nature of a zine is to kind of be that like experimental place to kind of explore like themes of things that you wouldn't see in like a T magazine or a Vogue or things like that. But then just kind of tying that back into like, you know, what we're trying to explore. It's like, okay, well, we want to have quote, we're gonna have Audre Lorde's quote on one page, and it's gonna take up the whole thing. Like it's not like we're gonna like read that shit again, like, you know, like even with like the transcription, right, like giving the weight to like the slides to kind of make sure that like pairing that information with like the words that you guys like were saying, I think was just important to kind of put like visual, like anything can be a visual, like these are all kind of images that like words that become art, like you know. And I think that was kind of a way that we tried to tie in kind of like actually where you were talking about like that healing part, right, like kind of using our imagery and our design to really turn this into something that like helps people, kind of doesn't like help people, but like, you know, like gives like a space for things that don't usually have space.
Well, I think this spread that's up on the share right now is such a wonderful example of this, right? Because the like 9-to-5 business typographer in me that is absolutely a product of surviving the Cosmic Slop like reacts to this, because it very intentionally and obviously breaks all kinds of good typography rules. But as I think I say later on in the book, fuck good design, right? Like we want you to grapple with these concepts that are being represented here, and to not only wrap your mind, but literally wrap your hands around it. And so by forcing you to engage with the objects, turn your head, to treat the book as though it's something that is existing and physical in the world, it really drives that point home. Yep, exactly, Aishatu. It literally makes you change your perspective. Thank you. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. You guys did such a great job.
Yeah, I think, and like in the transcription, I think this is also like, you know, we talked, Michael, you talked like about how like, you know, separating design from art and art not being design, which is why I'm like, I guess this is kind of like a question for y'all then. I have to throw it to like you guys, Michael, Aziz, Shaquille, like seeing how this kind of came together, like, and we kind of have tied, and like the things that kind of we've shared, like, how would you, like, what was done here in terms of like the separation between art and design, would you say? Like, how do we kind of navigate what we just put together through that?
To me, this is exactly a design object. And the fact that it breaks the rules of design in doing that is very much the problem that we set out to solve, right? Like my whole thing that design is not art is that design doesn't come into being without something that requires a solution. artists, and I love you all, but I will never claim to be one. There's a compulsion, right? There's a need to express something within yourself, but the designer approaches an unsettled mass, I guess, in need of a resolution or an articulation. This is what we're grappling with internally right now, is what do you call that thing that designers do? But this is exactly it. Like, in a headier, sort of larger sense, the design problem here wasn't laying this out into a book. It was getting these words and these ideas and these stories to have the requisite impact that they need to have on the person receiving them. And that is something that the design and layout team absolutely hit here, because you go through this and the fact that it is counter to the received knowledge of how things are supposed to work serves to reinforce what it is that we're saying, which is that the received knowledge is bullshit and we have to break through it. It's a huge win.
Yeah, I agree with Michael. I think that from a perspective of design, I think it's an artifact that wants to lead people or lead an audience to a certain area, you know. And I think, like, to like what Shaquille was saying, what Michael mentioned too, about like reorienting yourself, like, you know, like this idea of the Cosmic Slop, and I kind of start to think about this zine as a instruction manual or kind of tool to navigate it. It also is kind of pointing to this idea in the layout that life or navigating the Cosmic Slop isn't a linear path. And you might think that you're going one direction, but you're going to have to reorient. You know, you might even have to do a complete 180 in order to make sure you're going in the direction that you need to be going. And where I think it starts to differ from, you know, art as just an artist artifact alone, is the fact that it is trying to communicate something beyond its presence, you know, and it's not just trying to it's not just kind of like, I guess, for itself or for the artist alone. There's an intention for it to live beyond the person who created it, and to guide people who are not the creators of it, you know. And I think sometimes, like, you know, if I was creating a piece of art, I guess, for myself, I'm not necessarily having to like consider other people in the way that I think that this, as a designed artifact, there is a consideration of how other people are going to receive it. So yeah.
I think just to add to that, when I was thinking about the construction of the zine and like the design elements, I felt like because I have a little bit of a non-traditional background with design, a lot of the rules and regulations and things that most people consider were not at the forefront of my brain. And so I would like create something and then I'd like put it there, and then I'd talk to my sister and my brother who have a more traditional design background, and they would like expose all the things, or like, wait, this needs to be like this and this needs to be that. And I'd be like, oh, okay. But whereas with writing, I automatically had those, I want to call them barriers, but like these ideas of like, this is how it should be said, or this is how it should be put together. And I felt a lot more of the prejudgment and like self-doubt that was in it. And so it's a lot of unlearning as we go. And I think there's more fun and freedom in it when we reject a lot of that, because putting it together while it was really stressful, I think was more enjoyable to me than like the writing piece, because I was constantly second guessing myself as I was writing things, and I couldn't really just like go into it. And it took a while for me to just be like, okay, let it go, just let it go and let it be. So
I think that kind of like hits on like, you know, like honestly, like the hardest part of like putting this together was like that unlearning, like being like, okay, so like default brain, like not going back to, well, it has to be like AP style. It needs to be like, okay, we need to have this, we need to have these things. And it was like, no, like you don't need to have those things. And just being like, I guess also just like being okay with that. Like it was like, you know, like the part of the process is like, understanding like, yeah, like, okay, like this is cool. Like, you know, like not like it's cool, but it's like, yeah, like helping to kind of break things down and for like each of us kind of like in the writing, I like, yeah, like the taking apart, like I don't write all the time. And it was just like, oh yeah, let me like think about like words, like how we throw this together, like how can we like make this look like super cool. And like even I feel like I kind of sketched out like the Cosmic Slop, and I was like, this is like I made it just like you would make like a magazine like layout. And I was like, you have defaulted. Like I was like, you are in your own Cosmic Slop, you know? And it's just like you get like caught up. It's so easy to like get caught up in these things, especially like as we're working like beyond this, like in these systems, like actively, like, you know, like with job, like you were in school, and like I was working at my old job, and it was like, we're just doing like, you know, we come and then we would do this. And it's like having that like two brain moment where it's like, okay, like separate, like put one on and put one off. And it was like really I feel like I grew a lot like in this, like I learned a lot in reading all this stuff, but then also just kind of like, you know, like push me into kind of a new like page of like, oh yeah, like the possibilities of design just like here, and then like continuing on into the digital version of this, like how we're going to format that, I think is exciting, but also like, yeah, a growth point, like an always growing point.
I think one thing that's interesting about this process, if I may, is that, you know, while we were engaged, and I think as a group are still engaged in breaking a lot of these rules, one of the interesting things about wanting this to be a publication, which it is, thanks to Nagash and his team's work, is that we did have to abide by some rules. Aishatu said, you know, there's a lot you could do, you know, breaking the grid. And I am, you know, 100% here to dissect the allegiance to particularly like Swiss generated grids and all these other kind of things in contemporary graphic design. And rules are important. And I think what's particularly notable about this project is not that we decided there's no rules and everything is permissible and blah, blah, blah. It's that we said, we're going to look at the rules that we have been presented with objectively, decide on their merit whether or not we keep them or change them, and then decide why we're changing. And this is an artifact of that, because, you know, with no rules, you just have chaos, and chaos doesn't, you know, end up with anything useful or transmissible. And, you know, we're bound by the colors that we pick, by the fonts, by the page size, by a number of things, but these are bindings and contracts, if you will, that we've entered into willingly, as opposed to having them imposed on us. I think that's really the fundamental difference in a publication like this versus what we do at our day jobs.
If I may add as well, I think when you look at the different pages, you can see that each page is a kind of negotiation between readability and breaking away from the grid. So we try to find a good balance in order to ensure that also the content is still going to be accessible and readable. Because it's, of course, there's so many interesting creative ideas of how you could break away from the grid that is known for magazines. However, it's really important also that the zine that contains the knowledge is still presented in a way that is easily digestible. So if you look at each page, you can see that there was this kind of conversation going on between how to find the balance between it being readable and also always including some kind of new element that is not part of the standard.
Actually, a good point. Go ahead.
I was just going to add that it's an interesting concept, because I think that some of what you start to kind of realize is that the things that are necessary for us to communicate sometimes are not able to be communicated in the way they need to be, because the design standards that exist that we use aren't adequate for expressing them properly. And so you have to find or break those rules in order to communicate things and let them exist in the way that are going to be as true to form and how they should be represented.
Yeah, what I was going to say is to go off of what Ashiatu was saying in regards to accessibility. A lot of the things that we spoke about in regards to post-print was also having a digital version online and making sure that folks can access it, and ensuring that we have like screen readers in place, like making sure that as we're going through each of the steps in regards to like how the zine is accessed or regarded to, just like everybody can tap in. And so I think another piece I really want to mention is like the trust piece within the team was really dope. And I just want to say like big kudos and love and gratitude to y'all for trusting us to do this because it was just a lot of learning as we go. And as Kelvin was saying too, just a lot of unlearning in the process. And I think having just being able to feel like everybody's got each other's back was a big deal.
Yeah, this would not have been able to happen without that trust. And most things that we do would not be able to happen without that trust. So really important to call that out. And I just mentioned this in our steering chat, but I'm just blown away by everyone who worked on this in just so many ways. And I just had a thought as tied to this grid breaking idea as well. If anyone's never read any manga before, you should go do that, because you're gonna get some really interesting examples of using designed communication design in a publication with all kinds of non-standard grid layouts and framing and paneling and page breaks and all that type of stuff. So it's a great Shonen Jump app's $2.99 or $1.99 a month. So go check it out for another non-Western example of publication design.
Yeah, do we have anybody? I'm trying to think if I have any other questions, but I think, yeah, this was it was a lot of teamwork. But yeah, if anybody doesn't have, or we can, I think we're at like 10 minutes out. So like if we are feeling steady, we can definitely wrap up a little early. But yeah, if you don't have your copy, it's in the mail. And if you haven't ordered one yet, the link is here, but we'll also share it in the general Slack channel again. But yeah, does anybody have any like last things, questions?
I just had a tiny thing as well, but I mean, yeah, the one thing I really also appreciate about the resale process is there's a lot of unpredictability, and like sometimes things go wrong and you have to recalibrate. And the one small thing I remember is like the team portraits, because I mean, when you print these for a book, for like a book style, the 2 pages are not always next to each other. So sometimes you have a real like dark page, like a real dark inky page next to like some text or something like that. So we had to tweak stuff as we went. And I just always referred to the fuck good design page. I was like, all right, they said it themselves. So yeah, if they complain, we're gonna redirect them to that quote. But yeah, thank you all for real. And it is truly a work of trust and collaboration, mutual trust. So thanks everyone involved.
So I don't have a question. My name's Colleen. I'm Kellen's roommate. And I've been kind of following Kellen along this journey, kind of watching them work on it. And I don't really have any background in design. I don't know what it takes to put together a zine. So to have this hour and a half to look into what you guys have done and kind of get like the full story of what Kellen's been working on for months is really cool. It's very inspiring to see what's inside these pages. Not only is it beautiful, but it's this concept that is extremely translatable in the way that you guys have presented it, and easy for me to understand as someone who is somewhat new to the topic and trying to learn and get invested in it. But not a comment, just a word of praise. You guys did a really great job, and I'm excited to get mine in the mail.
Thank you.
What? Wait, are you calling in from down the hall?
No, like right across.
Yes.
I was looking like, stop, not me hearing you in the other room right now.
Any other last thoughts, questions?
Sweet, yeah. Thank everybody. Buy that shit. More to come.
Way more to come. Just the beginning.
See you on the flip side. Enjoy your Sunday. And
Thanks so much for coming, everyone.
Thank you all.
This is also recorded, so we'll probably share it on YouTube at some point, so you can share with your friends who didn't make it. But thanks so much for coming, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all.
Peace, y'all.